The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a hollow mountain. Lights floated in the air without any visible support. Seats carved from strange metals rose in circles around a central platform where speakers addressed the gathered representatives. 12 species had built this place together over 1,000 years ago. They called it Varanthos Prime, and they considered it the heart of civilized space. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the back row. Her seat was smaller than the others. It had been added 15 years ago when humanity first joined the council as observers. She had a voice but limited voting rights. Most of the older species treated her presence as a formality, like a child allowed to sit at the adult table during a family dinner. Today, the chamber was full. Representatives from all 12 founding species had gathered for what they called the Centennial Security Assessment. Every 100 years, the Council reviewed threats to galactic peace and made plans for the century ahead. Elena had read the reports. She knew what was coming. High Counselor Thevrix of the Sindari stood on the central platform. His species looked like tall birds with scales instead of feathers. Their eyes sat on the sides of their heads, giving them excellent peripheral vision. Thevrix had held his position for 60 years. He was considered wise and cautious. "We must discuss the dominion of Kethra," he announced. His voice carried through the chamber without any need for amplification. The acoustics were perfect. "They have sent an ultimatum." A holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed a section of the galaxy's rim, far from the core worlds where most council species lived. 3 star systems blinked red. "The Dominion demands we cede these territories," Thevrix continued. "They claim historical rights to the region. They have given us 30 standard days to comply." Elena watched the other representatives. Most showed fear in their body language. The Kethra were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. They had absorbed 17 smaller civilizations over the past 5 centuries. Their military was massive and brutal. "Our defense committee has analyzed the situation," Thevrix said. A new display appeared, showing ship counts and fleet positions. "The Dominion maintains over 800 capital ships. Our combined defense force numbers approximately 300, spread across dozens of systems." The numbers told the story clearly. The Council could not win a direct war against the Kethra. Everyone in the chamber knew this. "Furthermore," Thevrix added, his voice dropping slightly, "one of the contested systems contains a human colony, approximately 40,000 individuals." Elena felt the eyes turn toward her. Some held sympathy. Most held something closer to calculation. A representative from the Morvathi collective raised a tentacle. The Morvathi resembled large octopi that had learned to walk on land. "What is the committee's recommendation?" Thevrix's feathers rippled in a pattern Elena had learned to recognize as discomfort. "We recommend accepting the Dominion's terms. The 3 systems are sparsely populated and strategically insignificant. Resistance would cost us far more than compliance." "And the human colony?" another voice called out. "Partial evacuation may be possible before the deadline," Thevrix answered. "We estimate we can save perhaps half the population if we begin immediately." Elena stood. The movement drew attention simply because humans so rarely spoke in these sessions. "I request the floor, High Counselor." Thevrix's head turned, both eyes focusing on her briefly before returning to their normal, wide-angle position. "Ambassador Vasquez, you may speak, briefly." She walked down toward the central platform. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Humans were small compared to most council species. Elena stood barely chest-high to a Sindari, but she had learned that confidence mattered more than size. "The Council's recommendation is unacceptable to humanity," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We will not abandon our colony." A ripple of reaction passed through the chamber. Some delegates made sounds that translated as laughter. Others simply stared. Counselor Vreth of the Arcani Federation leaned forward. The Arcani were massive creatures, built like bears covered in metallic fur. "Ambassador, with respect, what do you propose to do? Your species maintains 23 registered vessels. The Kethra Vanguard alone numbers over 100. "We will manage," Elena replied. More laughter. The sound hurt, but Elena kept her expression neutral. Humans had learned patience during their centuries of internal war. They had learned to wait, and to prepare, and to strike only when the moment was right. "This is not a matter of bravery," Theverick said, not unkindly. "It is mathematics. Your fleet cannot defeat the Dominion. Your colony cannot be defended with your available resources. We understand your attachment to your people, but sometimes sacrifice is necessary for the greater good." Elena smiled. It was a small smile, the kind humans made when they knew something others did not. "High Counselor, I thank you for your concern. However, humanity does not intend to sacrifice anyone today." She raised her hand to her ear, activating a communication device. "This is Ambassador Vasquez. Authorization code Lighthouse 77 Alpha. Initiate Operation Lighthouse. Repeat, initiate Operation Lighthouse." The chamber fell silent. Even the delegates who had been laughing stopped. "What have you done?" Theverick asked. "I have requested that Earth's home fleet respond to the Dominion's aggression," Elena answered. "They will arrive in the contested system within 6 hours." Counselor Vreth made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. "Your home fleet? You mean those 23 vessels? They will die, Ambassador. They will die, and your colony will fall anyway, and you will have accomplished nothing except adding to the body count." Elena did not respond. She simply returned to her seat in the back row and waited. The council continued its discussion for another hour. They debated evacuation logistics, diplomatic approaches to the Dominion, potential future concessions that might satisfy Kethra expansion. Elena listened but did not speak again. She had said everything that mattered. Far across the galaxy, in the system humanity called New Eden, events were already in motion. The colony world was beautiful. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. Green continents broke through the water like islands in a vast sea. 42,000 humans had built their homes here over the past decade. They had farms and schools and hospitals. They had children who had never seen Earth. Governor Marcus Chen stood in his office, watching the sky through a reinforced window. He had received the alert from Ambassador Vasquez an hour ago. The Kethra were coming. The council had abandoned them, but help was on the way. "Governor," his aide said from the doorway, "the defense garrison reports ready." Marcus nodded. "How many ships do we have?" 17 patrol corvettes, sir, all crewed and armed." 17 small ships against over 100 Kethra warships. The numbers were absurd. But Marcus had read the classified briefings. He knew what those 17 corvettes could do. "Tell Commander Rodriguez to take position around the planet," he ordered. "Standard defensive formation. Do not fire unless fired upon." "Yes, sir." The aide left. Marcus continued watching the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the blue atmosphere, sensors had detected the Kethra Vanguard approaching. 112 warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the colony garrison. They would arrive within the hour. In the void of space, Commander Sofia Rodriguez checked her tactical display one final time. Her corvette, the Santiago, held position at the center of the defensive formation. 16 other ships spread around her in a pattern that looked random, but was actually precisely calculated. "All ships report ready," her communications officer announced. Sophia smiled. She had served in Earth's Navy for 20 years. She had trained for moments like this. "Good. Remember your orders. We hold until reinforcements arrive. Do not pursue if they retreat. Our job is to protect the colony, not to win glory." "Contact," her sensor officer called out. "Kethra Vanguard emerging from faster-than-light transit. 112 vessels confirmed. They are assuming attack formation." Sophia watched the display update as enemy icons appeared. So many of them. To anyone watching, this must have looked like suicide. "Open a channel to the Kethra flagship," she ordered. A moment later, a harsh face appeared on her screen. The Kethra looked like insects crossed with reptiles. Their eyes were compound, seeing in dozens of directions at once. Their mandibles clicked when they spoke. "Human vessel," the Kethra admiral said, "you are trespassing in Dominion territory. Surrender your ships and your colony, and we will allow your population to leave peacefully. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Sophia leaned back in her chair. "Admiral, this system belongs to humanity. Your ultimatum to the Galactic Council has no authority here. I suggest you withdraw your forces before someone gets hurt." The admiral made a clicking sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "You have 17 ships. I have 112. Your mathematics are poor, human." "Maybe," Sophia replied, "but I think you should check yours again." She cut the channel and turned to her crew. "All ships, weapons free. Execute pattern Omega-7 on my mark." The tactical officer looked at her. "Commander, they outnumber us 7-1. Sophia's smile widened. "Then it's almost a fair fight." Mark. The 17 human corvettes moved as one. They accelerated toward the Kethra formation with perfect coordination, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. The Kethra admiral watched them come and felt his confidence waver for the first time. These humans flew like they did not fear death. He would soon learn they had very good reasons for their courage. The Kethra admiral's name was Yulveth. He had commanded warships for 37 years. He had fought in 47 engagements against 17 different species. He had never lost a battle. His record was perfect, and he intended to keep it that way. "All ships, forward batteries," he ordered. "Destroy these pests." His fleet responded with disciplined efficiency. The Kethra were warriors by nature and training. Their ships were designed for one purpose: overwhelming firepower. Energy weapons charged across 100 hulls. Missiles locked onto the approaching human vessels. In moments, the void would fill with destruction. The humans should have died in the first volley. They did not. Yulveth watched in disbelief as the human corvettes scattered just before his weapons fired. They moved together, 17 ships acting like a single organism with 17 bodies. His targeting systems, the most advanced the Dominion possessed, could not track them. His weapons struck empty space where the humans had been a heartbeat earlier. "They are jamming our sensors," his tactical officer reported, confusion in his voice. "Compensate," Yulveth ordered. But before his ships could adjust, the humans struck back. The corvettes swept through his formation like knives through water. They fired as they flew, their weapons finding targets with impossible precision. Yulveth watched a destroyer's shields collapse under concentrated fire. A moment later, its engine section exploded, leaving the ship dead in space. Then another. Then 3 more. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "the humans are targeting command and control nodes. They are crippling our coordination." Yulveth understood the tactic. Cut the head from the body and the body dies. But understanding a tactic and stopping it were different things. His ships were larger, more powerful, more numerous. They should have been able to swat these tiny attackers aside. Instead, the humans danced between them like shadows. The Santiago led the attack. Commander Rodriguez had trained for this moment her entire career. She knew every capability of her ship, every limitation of Kethra technology. Human intelligence services had spent decades studying the Dominion. They knew where the enemy was strong and where they were weak. "Target that cruiser's sensor array," she ordered. "Then come around for the engine pods." Her pilot, Lieutenant Kim, responded instantly. The Santiago dove beneath a stream of enemy fire, twisted between 2 destroyers, and emerged behind the cruiser. Their weapons spoke, and the cruiser went blind. "Good hit," the tactical officer reported, moving to secondary target. Around her, the other corvettes executed similar maneuvers. Each ship knew its role. Each pilot had memorized hundreds of attack patterns. They moved with the precision of a single mind controlling 17 bodies. This was humanity's secret, not superior weapons, but superior coordination. Human neural interfaces allowed pilots to share information in real time. What one ship saw, all ships knew. What one captain decided, all captains understood. The Kethra had numbers, but the humans had unity. Yulveth watched his tactical display turn red with damaged and destroyed vessels. In 30 minutes, he had lost 27 ships. The humans had lost 1, and its crew had ejected safely before the explosion. "This is impossible," he muttered. His second-in-command, a veteran named Thrakveth, stood beside him. The younger officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, their ships are absorbing damage that should destroy them. Our weapons hit them, but they keep fighting." It was true. Yulveth had seen a human corvette take 3 direct hits from a destroyer's main battery. The ship should have been vaporized. Instead, it had shuddered, adjusted its course, and destroyed its attacker with a precise shot to the reactor core. "What kind of shields do they have?" Yulveth demanded. No one could answer him. The Dominion's intelligence on human technology was decades out of date. They had assumed the young species was primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel. They had assumed wrong. An hour into the battle, Yulveth faced a terrible truth. He was losing. His vanguard, 112 of the Dominion's finest warships, was being torn apart by 17 human corvettes. 63 of his ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest were scattered, their formation broken, their coordination shattered. The humans moved among them like predators, picking off stragglers. "Admiral," Thrakveth said quietly, "we must withdraw." Yulveth's compound eyes flickered across the tactical display. Pride warred with survival in his mind. No Kethra admiral had ever retreated from an inferior force. The shame would follow him forever. But dead admirals had no futures to worry about. "Signal all ships," he said, the words like poison on his tongue. "Full retreat. Make for the system's edge at maximum speed." The survivors fled. They scattered in all directions, each ship seeking its own escape route. The humans pursued only those that continued to threaten the colony, letting the rest go. They showed no desire for unnecessary killing. On the bridge of the Santiago, Commander Rodriguez watched the enemy run. She felt no joy in the victory. War was not something to celebrate, only to survive. "Signal the colony," she ordered. "Threat neutralized. For now." "Commander," her sensor officer said, "the Kethra are transmitting. They are warning their main fleet." Rodriguez nodded. She had expected this. "How long until the main fleet can arrive?" "Based on their last known position, approximately 72 hours. 72 hours until 800 warships descended on New Eden. The colony garrison had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. Far away on Varanthus Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. The holographic display showed everything. Human ships weaving through Kethra formations, enemy vessels exploding or going dark, the impossible coordination, the impossible precision, the impossible victory. "How?" Counselor Vreth finally managed to ask. His deep voice shook slightly. "How did they do this?" Ambassador Vasquez stood in the back row, her expression calm. She had watched the battle like everyone else, but she had known what would happen. She had known for years. High Counselor Thevrix turned to face her. His feathers were pressed flat against his body, a sign of deep distress. "Ambassador, you told us humanity had 23 vessels. Those were not your registered ships." "No," Elena agreed. "Those were 17 patrol corvettes assigned to the colony's local defense garrison. They are not part of our official fleet registry." The chamber erupted in confused noise. Species who had no common language found common outrage. They had been deceived. Humanity had hidden military assets from the Council. This was a violation of trust, of treaty, of everything the Council stood for. Elena waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke again, her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Distinguished representatives, I understand your concern, but I must ask you to consider the situation from humanity's perspective." She walked slowly toward the central platform. Every eye in the chamber followed her. 15 years ago, we joined this council as observers. We were told we would be protected by the combined strength of 12 ancient species. We were told the galaxy was civilized now, that the old wars were over, that peace was the norm. She reached the platform and turned to face the assembly. Then we watched the Kethra conquer 3 species in 5 years. We watched the council debate and delay and ultimately do nothing. We watched civilizations die while this body discussed proper protocols for intervention. Silence filled the chamber. Elena's words hit home because they were true. We hoped we would never need to defend ourselves. We built our hidden defenses anyway. Hope is not a strategy. She paused. Now, would the Council like to see what humanity sends when we are actually concerned about a threat? She raised her hand. A new display appeared above the platform. It showed the New Eden system, now clear of Kethra ships. Then it showed the system's edge, where massive energy signatures were appearing. "The first elements of Earth's rapid response fleet are arriving," Elena announced. 142 warships, each significantly larger and more powerful than the corvettes you just witnessed. The display updated as human ships emerged from faster-than-light transit, dreadnoughts the size of space stations, cruisers bristling with weapons, carriers launching swarms of fighter craft. It was a display of military power that no council species had ever seen. Councillor Theverick stared at the display. His voice was barely a whisper. "How many ships does humanity have?" Elena smiled that small smile again. "These are just the rapid response forces, High Counselor. Our main battle groups are still mobilizing." "How many?" Theverick repeated. Elena considered the question. She could lie, but there was no point now. The secret was out. "Enough," she said simply. "We have enough." The Council would learn more in the coming days. They would learn about humanity's shadow fleet, built in hidden shipyards over 3 decades. They would learn about human technology that their intelligence services had completely missed. They would learn that the young species they had dismissed as primitive was actually one of the most advanced military powers in the galaxy. But for now, they simply stared at the display, watching human warships take position around a colony world that the Council had been willing to sacrifice. Ambassador Vasquez returned to her seat in the back row. She had more to say, but it could wait. The main Kethra fleet was coming. The real battle had not yet begun. In his damaged flagship, limping toward the system's edge, Admiral Yulveth transmitted his report to the Dominion High Command. He told them everything: the human tactics, the human technology, the human reinforcements. He warned them that this enemy was not what they had expected. The High Command received his report and dismissed his concerns. 112 ships had been defeated, yes, but the Grand Fleet numbered over 800. No force in the galaxy could stand against such might. They would learn their mistake soon enough. The Dominion High Command gathered in the war chamber of Kethra Prime. 12 admirals sat around a table carved from the bones of conquered enemies. Trophies lined the walls, artifacts from civilizations that no longer existed. The Kethra had built their empire on conquest, and they wore their victories proudly. Supreme Commander Zethrak presided over the meeting. He was ancient by Kethra standards, his carapace scarred from 100 battles. His compound eyes had watched species rise and fall. He had never known defeat. "Admiral Yulveth claims he was beaten by 17 small ships," Zethrak said. His voice dripped with contempt. "He says the humans have technology beyond our understanding. He recommends caution." The other admirals clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. "Yulveth has grown old and fearful," one of them said. "He was outwitted by primitive mammals and seeks to excuse his failure." "The humans are children in galactic terms," another added. "They have been among the stars for barely 2 centuries. We have conquered older species. We will conquer them." Zethrak raised a claw for silence. "I agree that Yulveth's defeat is shameful, but we must not underestimate any enemy, even a young one. We will commit the Grand Fleet, 817 capital ships, plus support craft. We will crush this human resistance and take their colony world as we planned." He stood, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "This is not merely about territory. The Galactic Council has watched the Kethra expand for centuries. They fear us, but they do nothing. If we show weakness now, if we accept defeat from these humans, other species will be encouraged to resist. We must make an example." The admirals rose as one. They would lead their fleets to war. They would destroy the humans. They would prove that the Dominion remained the greatest military power in the galaxy. None of them suspected what awaited them. 3 days later, the Grand Fleet arrived at the New Eden system. Sub-Commander Threxaya stood at her station on the destroyer Void's Fang. She was young, barely 30 years old, newly promoted after distinguished service in the Arcani border campaigns. This was her first major fleet action. She had heard the rumors about Yulveth's defeat, but she dismissed them. The Vanguard had been caught off guard. The Grand Fleet would not make the same mistake. "Contact," the sensor officer announced. "Human fleet detected in defensive formation around the 3rd planet." Threxia examined the display. She counted 300 human ships. Large ones, bigger than anything Yulveth had described. But 300 against 800. The math was simple. "They're brave, I'll give them that," her captain Velrath commented. "Brave or foolish, Foolish, Threxa agreed. They should have fled while they could. The Grand Fleet advanced in perfect formation. Dreadnoughts led the way, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. Cruisers flanked them in protective screens. Destroyers like the Void's Fang formed the outer wings, ready to chase down any enemy that tried to escape. Supreme Commander Zethrak watched from his flagship, the Dominion's Will. The largest warship ever built by the Kethra, it carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. He felt confident. He felt invincible. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Begin the attack." The Grand Fleet surged forward, 800 vessels accelerating as one, their engines burning bright against the stars. It was the largest Kethra military operation in 2 centuries. It would be remembered forever. Just not in the way Zethrak expected. The human fleet did not retreat. They did not scatter. They held their positions around New Eden, forming a wall of metal and light between the colony and its attackers. Admiral James Monroe commanded from his dreadnought, the Earth's Resolve. He was a veteran of 3 decades in the Navy, a quiet man who preferred chess to combat. But when war came, he fought without hesitation. "All ships, hold formation until they enter optimal range," he ordered. "Dreadnoughts anchor the line. Cruisers stand by for flanking maneuvers. Destroyers, you know your roles." "Admiral," his aide said, "they outnumber us more than 2 to 1. Monroe nodded. "They do, which means this needs to be a demonstration, not just a battle. We need them to understand what they're facing. We need them to choose surrender over annihilation." The aide frowned. "Sir? I don't want to kill 800 ships worth of Kethra, Commander. I want to defeat them so thoroughly that they stop fighting. There's a difference." The 2 fleets closed. At optimal range, Monroe gave a single command: "Fire." What followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Human dreadnoughts opened up with weapons that the Kethra had never encountered. Plasma beams that cut through shields like they were not there. Kinetic rounds accelerated to a fraction of light speed, impossible to intercept. Guided missiles that changed course unpredictably, evading point defense systems designed to stop them. The first wave of Kethra ships simply died. 12 dreadnoughts, the pride of the Dominion fleet, were reduced to expanding clouds of debris in under a minute. "How?" Threxa whispered, watching her display turn red with destroyed friendly vessels. The human ships moved with the same impossible coordination she had heard about in Yulvest's reports. They seemed to know where the Kethra would be before they moved. They concentrated fire with devastating efficiency, destroying one target before moving to the next. No wasted shots, no missed opportunities. On the Dominion's Will, Supreme Commander Zethrak watched his fleet disintegrate. This was not battle. This was slaughter. "All ships, press the attack," he roared. "We have the numbers. We can overwhelm them." But numbers meant nothing if you could not hit your targets. Human ships danced through the Kethra formation, attacking from unexpected angles. Human cruisers executed flanking maneuvers of stunning complexity, appearing behind enemy lines and devastating unprepared vessels. Human destroyers worked in packs, isolating larger ships and tearing them apart. An hour into the battle, the Kethra had lost 200 ships. The humans had lost 8. Threx's destroyer was ordered to pursue a fleeing human cruiser. They chased it through an asteroid field, gaining slowly. Victory seemed possible. Then the cruiser stopped running. It turned to face them, and Threxa saw its weapons charging. "Evasive action!" Captain Velrath shouted. Too late. The human ship fired a single shot that punched through their forward shields and destroyed their main engine. The Void's Fang went dark, drifting helplessly, but it did not explode. The human cruiser approached, close enough that Threxa could see its hull markings. It scanned them, confirmed they were no longer a threat, and then simply left. "They didn't kill us," she said, astonished. "They had us dead, and they let us live." Around her, similar scenes played out across the battle. Human ships targeted weapons and engines, not life support. They crippled Kethra vessels, but did not destroy their crews. They fought with lethal efficiency and strange mercy. After 6 hours, it was over. The Dominion Grand Fleet, 817 capital ships, the greatest military force the Kethra had ever assembled, ceased to exist. 400 ships destroyed, 300 disabled and drifting. The remainder in full retreat scattered across nearby systems. Human casualties, 11 ships destroyed, 34 damaged. Supreme Commander Zethrak sat alone on the bridge of the Dominion's will. His flagship was crippled, its engines destroyed, its weapons offline. Human warships surrounded it, their weapons pointed at his hull but not firing. A communication request appeared. Human, he accepted it. Admiral Monroe's face appeared on his screen. The human looked tired, not triumphant. Supreme Commander, Monroe said, your fleet is defeated. Your flagship is surrounded. You can surrender now, or you can die. But I would prefer you live. The Dominion needs leaders who understand what happened here today. Zethrak's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter laughter. What did happen here, human? What are you? Monroe considered the question. We're a species that learned very hard lessons about war a long time ago. We nearly destroyed ourselves. We decided not to let that happen again. You could have destroyed us completely. Why didn't you? Because destroying you was never the goal. Stopping you was. Monroe paused. Your fleet attacked a colony of 40,000 civilians. We defended them. That's all this needed to be. Zethrak stared at the human. He had fought many species in his long career. He had never encountered one like this. What happens now, he asked. Now we talk, Monroe said. Your government, my government, probably the Galactic Council too. We discuss terms for peace. We figure out how to make sure this never happens again. And if the Dominion refuses? Monroe's expression did not change, but something in his eyes grew harder. Then we have this conversation again after the next battle, and the next. As many times as it takes. But I hope your leaders are wise enough to recognize when a war is over. The communication ended. Zethrak sat in the darkness of his ruined bridge and thought about wisdom. On Varanthos Prime, the Galactic Council watched recordings of the battle. 12 species, some ancient and some merely old, witnessed the destruction of the Dominion Grand Fleet by a human force one-third its size. High Counselor Thevrik spoke into the silence. Ambassador Vasquez, please explain what we just saw. Elena walked to the central platform. She looked tired too, tired and sad. You saw the result of 30 years of preparation, High Counselor. You saw what humanity built while the Council ignored the Kethra threat. You saw why we never told you what we were doing. You didn't trust us, Counselor Vreth rumbled. No, Elena agreed. We didn't, and now you know why. She gestured at the display, which showed human ships maintaining their defensive positions around New Eden. The Dominion Grand Fleet was the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. It no longer exists. In 6 hours, humanity broke the back of an empire that has terrified the Council for centuries. She paused, letting the implications sink in. And that was just our rapid response force. Our main battle groups are fully mobilized now. 400 additional warships, ready to deploy if needed. The chamber was silent. Every representative understood what this meant. Humanity was not just powerful. Humanity was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. What do you want? Thevrik asked quietly. Elena smiled, and for once it was a warm smile. We want peace. High Counselor, we have always wanted peace. We built our fleet not for conquest but for protection. For our people, and, if you'll have us, for yours as well. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had dismissed humanity for 15 years. The Dominion will need to be dealt with. They will need terms that are firm but fair. They will need help rebuilding in a direction that doesn't threaten everyone else. And the Council will need to become something more than a debate society. She straightened, her small human frame somehow filling the platform. Humanity is ready to help with all of this. If you'll trust us, if you'll work with us, if you're ready to build something better. The vote that followed was unanimous. Humanity would be granted full Council membership. The galaxy was about to change forever. 1 month after the battle, the ruling council of the Kethra Dominion gathered in emergency session. The war chamber that had once displayed trophies of conquest now felt like a tomb. The bone table where admirals had boasted of inevitable victory now seated broken survivors. Supreme Commander Zethrak had been allowed to return home. The humans had released him after the battle, along with every other Kethra officer who surrendered. No prisoners of war, no hostages, just defeated soldiers sent back to their people with a simple message: choose peace. Now he sat at the table, surrounded by politicians who had never fought a battle in their lives. They blamed him for the disaster. They called him a coward and a fool, but they also needed him because he was the only one who had faced the humans and survived. "We must rebuild the fleet," High Minister Vetharak declared. He was the eldest of the ruling council, a diplomat who had spent his career justifying Kethera expansion to other species. "We must call up the reserves, conscript new crews, build new ships. We will have our revenge." Zethrak listened to these words and felt nothing but exhaustion. "And then what, Minister? We rebuild for 10 years. We send another fleet. They destroy it in another 6 hours. We rebuild again. How many times do we repeat this cycle?" "Until we win," Vetharak snapped. "We are Kethera. We do not surrender. We do not accept defeat." "We are already defeated," Zethrak replied. 800 ships, Minister, the largest fleet we have ever assembled, destroyed by a force less than half its size, and that was not even their full strength. The chamber went silent. No one wanted to hear this, but no one could deny it. A younger voice spoke. Threxaya's brother Velthax had risen quickly through the political ranks. He was known as a moderate, often arguing against aggressive expansion. Many in the old guard considered him weak, but weakness was starting to look like wisdom. "We have received terms from the humans," Velthax said. "They do not demand our destruction. They do not seek to conquer our worlds or enslave our people." "What do they want?" another minister asked. Velthax activated a display. Text appeared in both Kethera script and human letters. Withdrawal from all territories conquered in the past century. Reparations to displaced species, paid over 30 years. Monitored disarmament to defensive levels only. No Kethera fleet may exceed 50 capital ships. All Kethera military movements must be reported to a joint oversight committee. Outrage erupted around the table. Surrender. Humiliation. The end of the Dominion as a great power. Ministers shouted about pride and honor and the glorious traditions of their species. Zethrak waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke the words that changed everything. "I have seen how the humans fight. I have watched their ships destroy ours with casual efficiency. But I have also seen something else." He paused. "They chose not to kill us. They crippled our ships, but spared our crews. They could have exterminated our fleet to the last vessel. They didn't." He stood, his scarred carapace catching the light. "In my entire career, I have never encountered an enemy who showed mercy to the defeated. We don't. No one does. But the humans," he shook his head slowly, "they fight like demons and show kindness like saints. I don't understand them, but I know this. If we continue to fight them, they will destroy us. Not because they hate us, but because we will leave them no choice." The chamber fell silent again. Zethrak's words carried weight because he had earned them in battle. "I recommend we accept their terms," he continued. "Not because we are weak, because we are wise enough to recognize when a war is over. Because survival is not shame, and because," he hesitated, "because perhaps it is time for the Kethera to learn a different way." The vote was close, but the moderates won. The Dominion would accept human terms. The war was over. On Varanthos Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez addressed the full Galactic Council for the first time as a member with full voting rights. The back row seat she had occupied for 15 years was now empty. She stood on the central platform, surrounded by the representatives of 12 ancient species. "I know many of you are afraid," she began. "You have learned that humanity hid a military force capable of defeating any power in the galaxy. You wonder what else we might be hiding. You wonder if we are a threat." She let the words hang in the air. "I cannot blame you for these fears. In your position, I would feel the same. So let me tell you the truth about humanity, the whole truth, so you can judge for yourselves." She activated a historical display. Images appeared. Human cities in flames, human soldiers dying in trenches, human children starving in war-torn streets. "Our species is violent. We have spent most of our history killing each other. We fought wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over things so trivial that later generations could not even remember why they started. We came very close to destroying ourselves completely. The images shifted. Humans rebuilding ruined cities. Humans feeding the hungry. Humans reaching out across old battle lines to shake hands with former enemies. But we learned, slowly, painfully, with countless setbacks and failures. We learned that strength without wisdom is tyranny. We learned that victory without mercy is just another form of defeat. We learned that the greatest victories are not won on battlefields, but in the peace that follows. Elena looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. We built our shadow fleet because we did not trust the galaxy to protect us. We were right not to trust. The Council was ready to sacrifice our colony to the Dominion without a fight. But we built that fleet with rules. We built it to defend, never to conquer. We built it hoping we would never need to use it. She straightened, her voice growing stronger. Now you know what we are. We are survivors. We are protectors. We are a species that learned the hard way to be better than our worst instincts. And we offer you a choice. A new display appeared. Plans for a joint defense network, technology sharing agreements, cooperative research programs. We can share what we know, not our most advanced capabilities, not yet. Trust must be earned on both sides. But enough to help the Council defend itself against future threats. Enough to make sure no species has to face another Dominion alone. High Counselor Thevrix rose from his seat. The Sindari had been the dominant voice in the Council for centuries. Now he faced a species that had proven itself more powerful than all the Council races combined. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, his voice careful, you ask us to trust you, but you kept secrets from us for 30 years. How can we believe you will not keep more secrets? How can we believe you will not use your power against us someday? Elena nodded. A fair question, High Counselor. Here is my answer. She raised her hand. A communication channel opened, connecting to Earth. This is Ambassador Vasquez. Authorization code Lighthouse 9 Alpha. I am requesting a full inventory disclosure to the Galactic Council. Repeat, full inventory. A moment later, data began streaming onto the Council's displays. Fleet compositions, base locations, weapon specifications, training protocols. Everything humanity had hidden for 30 years laid bare. The Council representatives stared in shock. This was unprecedented. No species had ever voluntarily revealed its military secrets. You now know exactly what we have, Elena said. 847 capital ships, 215 bases, all of it documented, all of it verifiable. Why? Thevrix asked. Why reveal this? Because you cannot build trust on secrets, Elena replied. Yes, you could use this information against us. You could form an alliance to oppose humanity. You could try to match our capabilities. She smiled. But I don't think you will, because I think underneath all the fear, you want what we want. Peace, security, a galaxy where species can grow and thrive without fearing conquest. She stepped down from the platform and walked toward the Sindari representative. The Kethra thought they could take whatever they wanted because they were strong. We showed them they were wrong. Now we're showing you that we have no intention of making the same mistake. We are not the new Dominion. We are something different. She extended her hand, a human gesture of greeting and agreement. High Counselor, will you help us build something better? For a long moment, Thevrix did not move. The chamber held its breath. 1,000 years of galactic politics hung in the balance. Then the Sindari elder reached out with his feathered limb and touched Elena's hand. I believe I will, he said. Across the galaxy, on a crippled destroyer drifting in a repair dock, Sub-Commander Threxia received orders that would change her life. She had survived the battle. Her ship had been recovered by human vessels and towed to a neutral station for repairs. She expected to be transferred to a new vessel, perhaps punished for the defeat. Instead, she was summoned to meet with a human officer. The meeting room was small and plain. A human woman waited inside, wearing a simple uniform with unfamiliar insignia. Sub-Commander Threxia? The woman asked. I'm Captain Sarah Chen, United Earth Navy. Please sit down. Threxia sat. She did not know what to expect. You were on the Void's Fang, Chen said, reviewing a data pad. Your ship was disabled in the asteroid field engagement. Our cruiser, the Portland, spared your vessel when they could have destroyed it. Yes, Threxay confirmed. I have wondered why. Chen set down the pad. Because killing you wasn't necessary. Your ship was no longer a threat. There was no tactical reason to destroy it, and every ethical reason not to. Threx's mandibles clicked in confusion. Ethical reason? We were enemies. In war, you destroy your enemies. In some wars, Chen agreed. In our wars, we try to remember that enemies are still people. People with families and futures. People who might become allies someday, if we give them the chance. She leaned forward. The Dominion is going to change, Sub-Commander. The old ways of conquest are over. Your species will need new leaders. Officers who understand that strength is not the same as cruelty. Officers who can work with other species instead of conquering them. Threxia began to understand. You want me to be one of those officers. I want to offer you a choice, Chen said. A position on a joint patrol ship, working alongside human crew. 6 months learning how we operate, how we think, how we build instead of destroy. After that, you return to your people with new skills and new perspectives. Why me? Chen smiled. Because when your ship was crippled, you didn't try to self-destruct and take the Portland with you. You didn't die for pride. You survived. That tells me you might be smart enough to help build something better. Threxa considered the offer. Her entire training told her this was weakness, that cooperation with former enemies was betrayal. But her experience told her something different. The humans had beaten the mightiest fleet her species had ever assembled. They had done it with superior technology and tactics. But they had also done it with something else, something she was only beginning to understand. They had done it while refusing to become the monsters they fought. I accept, she said. Chen extended her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Threxa took it. The galaxy was changing, and Threxa intended to change with it. 1 year had passed since the Battle of New Eden. The galaxy had changed more in those 12 months than in the previous century. The Dominion of Kethra was withdrawing from its conquered territories, slowly and sometimes reluctantly, but withdrawing nonetheless. Species that had lived under Kethra occupation for generations were rediscovering freedom. The Galactic Council, once a toothless assembly of frightened powers, was transforming into something with actual authority, and humanity was at the center of it all. Elena Vasquez, now High Ambassador of the United Earth Federation, stood on a platform overlooking the construction site. A new space station was being built in orbit around New Eden, the colony world that had nearly been sacrificed, the world where everything had changed. This station would house the first Joint Defense Command Center, staffed by officers from a dozen different species. Hard to believe it's only been a year, said Admiral Monroe, standing beside her. He had retired from active command after the battle, but he still advised on strategic matters. Sometimes I can barely believe any of it happened, Elena admitted. A year ago, we were observers in the back row. Now you're one of the most powerful diplomats in the galaxy, Monroe finished. Funny how things work out. Elena shook her head. It's not funny, it's terrifying. We're making decisions that will affect trillions of beings for generations. Every mistake we make now will ripple forward forever. Monroe nodded slowly. That's why we're being careful. That's why we're building coalitions instead of empires. That's why we're sharing technology instead of hoarding it. Is it enough? The Admiral considered the question. I don't know, but I know it's better than the alternative. Better than what the Kethra were doing. Better than what we might have done if we'd let fear guide us. On the station below, Sub-Commander Threxa was completing her 6-month training rotation. She had learned more in those months than in years of Kethra Military Academy. Not just tactics and technology, though she had learned plenty of both. She had learned a different way of thinking. Human ships were crewed by officers who questioned orders, who debated strategies, who were expected to think for themselves. This would have been considered insubordination in the Dominion. Here it was called initiative. Human soldiers trained not just to fight, but to build, not just to destroy, but to protect. They learned the cultures and languages of other species. They were taught that every enemy was a potential ally, every conflict an opportunity for resolution. It was alien. It was uncomfortable. It was beginning to make sense. Captain Sarah Chen found Threxa in the observation deck, watching human and Kethra ships patrol together outside the viewport. "Your rotation ends tomorrow," Chen said. "You'll be returning to your people." Threxa's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. "I have been thinking about what comes next. And the Dominion needs to change. Not just our military, our entire society. We built everything around conquest, around the idea that strength means taking from others. Now that we cannot take, we must learn to build. We must learn to create." She turned to face the human captain. "I want to help with that." Chen smiled. "I thought you might say that. We have a proposal for you." She activated a display. Plans appeared, showing a joint training academy, Kethra and human instructors working together. Students from across the galaxy learning new approaches to military service. "We want you to help design the curriculum," Chen said, "to help bridge the gap between how we think and how your people think, to help train the next generation of officers who will patrol this galaxy together." Threxa studied the plans. A year ago, she would have considered this impossible. Now it seemed like the only path forward. "I accept," she said. The dedication ceremony for the new Eden Station took place on the anniversary of the battle. Representatives from all council species attended. Even a Kethra delegation was present, led by Velthax, who had become the youngest High Minister in Dominion history. High Ambassador Vasquez gave the keynote address. 1 year ago, this system was a battlefield. The Kethra Dominion sent 800 ships to conquer a world of 40,000 civilians. The Galactic Council was prepared to let them succeed. Humanity stood alone. She paused, looking out at the assembled dignitaries. "We did not stand alone because we thought we were better than everyone else. We stood alone because we had to, because no one else would, because the alternative was to abandon our people to slavery or death." The colony world hung in space behind her, blue and green and alive. When the battle ended, we had a choice. We were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We could have demanded anything. We could have become the new Dominion, taking what we wanted because no one could stop us. She shook her head. We chose a different path, not because we were weak, but because we had learned, through centuries of our own bloody history, that power without purpose is just another form of destruction. We built our fleet to protect, and protection means more than defeating enemies. It means building something worth defending. She gestured to the station behind her, to the ships of multiple species patrolling together, to the mixed crews visible through viewports. "This station is what we chose to build. Not a fortress, not a weapon. A place where species learn to work together. A place where former enemies become partners. A place where the next generation will grow up without the fear that defined ours." Velthax was invited to speak. The young Kethra leader approached the podium with obvious nervousness. His species had been the villains of this story. Now he was being asked to help write a new chapter. 1 year ago, my people tried to take this world by force. We failed. We lost our fleet, our pride, and our certainty that strength alone could solve any problem. He looked at the human representatives, then at Threxa, who stood among the Joint Academy staff. "At first, we saw our defeat as humiliation. Many of my people still see it that way. They speak of revenge, of rebuilding, of returning to the old ways. But I believe they are wrong." His mandibles clicked in what humans had learned was a sign of deep emotion. The humans showed us something in that battle, something we had never seen before. They defeated us completely, then chose not to destroy us. They proved their strength, then offered us partnership. They won the war, then immediately began working for peace. He straightened, his posture reflecting a confidence he was still learning to feel. "This is not weakness. This is wisdom. And it is wisdom my people must learn, or we will destroy ourselves chasing a past that no longer exists." The ceremony continued with speeches from other representatives. Each species had been affected by the events of the past year. Each had been forced to reconsider old assumptions. The galaxy was not as they had believed. Strength was not what they had thought. As the ceremony ended, Elena found a quiet moment alone on an observation deck. She watched the stars, the same stars her ancestors had looked up at from Earth, dreaming of the day humanity would join the galactic community. Admiral Monroe found her there. "You did good work today," he said. "That speech will be remembered." "I hope so," Elena replied. "I hope all of this will be remembered as a turning point, not just another step in an endless cycle." "You think it might not be?" She sighed. "I think progress is never permanent. Every generation has to choose it again. We've built something good here, something that could change everything, but it will only last if we keep choosing to maintain it." Monroe nodded. "Then that's what we do. We keep choosing. Every day, every decision, every moment." He gestured at the station, at the ships, at the stars beyond. "That's what the first wave was really about, you know. Not the battle, not the fleet. The wave of change that followed. The decision to be something different, something better. The Kethra are learning it. The Council is learning it. Maybe in another generation, the whole galaxy will understand." Elena smiled. "That's optimistic. I'm a retired admiral. I'm allowed to be optimistic now." They stood together in silence, watching the galaxy turn. In her quarters on the station, HFY wrote a letter to her brother. She told him about her training, about her new assignment, about the future she was helping to build. She told him that the galaxy was changing and that their people could be part of that change if they chose to be. She did not know if he would understand. The old ways were comfortable. Change was frightening. But she had seen something in the humans that gave her hope. A species that had faced its own worst nature and decided to be better. If humans could learn that lesson, perhaps the Kethra could too. Governor Marcus Chen, still leading the New Eden colony, looked up at the new station from his office window. A year ago, he had watched Kethra warships appear in his sky. He had prepared himself for defeat, for death, for the end of everything his people had built. Instead, he had witnessed the beginning of something new. The colony had grown to 60,000 now. Immigrants from a dozen species had arrived, seeking safety under humanity's protection. They were building homes, starting businesses, raising children. They were creating a community that had not existed a year ago, that could not have existed without the events that brought them together. This was what the first wave had truly accomplished. Not the destruction of the Kethra fleet, though that had been necessary. Not the humiliation of an empire, though that had been unavoidable. The real victory was this: people from across the galaxy, former enemies and strangers, choosing to build a future together. Elena Vasquez had been right in her speech. What followed the battle was not conquest. It was the harder work of building something worth defending, and it was only the beginning. The stars continued to turn. Ships from a dozen species patrolled together. A former Kethra warrior helped train the next generation of peacekeepers. An alliance that had seemed impossible became inevitable. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they could do when threatened. Now they would show the galaxy what they could build when given peace. The first wave had been a battle. The second wave would be a civilization. And the Galactic Council, watching it all unfold, began to understand why they had been wrong to underestimate the small, violent, impossible species from the third planet of an unremarkable star. Humans were not just warriors, they were dreamers, and their dreams were changing the galaxy.